Guys, welcome back to HPL. I'm Tanner Grace, and I'm joined by ZZ Top frontman Nathan Zamora. Now we got our first match of the evening about to get underway here. Muzzy versus ErA. Now it's going to be a big story here. Is Muzzy going to get back into the winning circle, or is ErA going to even his record up 2-2 here?
Yeah, aggression I think going to be the key for Muzzy as we roll into this game, while ErA trying to stifle that aggression, playing as much control as we've seen him play in the past. I think this is the classic battle of who's going to win. Is it going to be the aggressor, or is it going to be the one playing a defensive measure? I mean, honestly, this match, if there's anyone, is anyone's game. But again, we both chose ErA for this one. Game one is getting underway right now. ErA versus Muzzy.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what they queue up in the first game of this match here, because I think it's really going to set the tone for the rest of the match. And you're seeing Muzzy start out with Druid, which is becoming a pretty popular choice by a lot of the players here in HPL for their first game of the match.
Yeah, we saw Purple 3-0 with Druid last week. I mean, it was a fantastic performance from him. Just kind of a relentless aggression. Honestly, his draws in those games were not absolutely crazy too. His game 3 draw, I think, was very good, but outside of that, just kind of what was going on. So ErA, looks like we got a spectator bug for what's going on here. We're going to bring that perspective up for you guys as soon as we get it fixed. For now, we're going to be rolling forward with Muzzy's point of view.
Yeah, and as you said, Muzzy, known for aggression, but it's nice to see these players be a little flexible and be able to switch it up and not always throw what their opponents expect of them.
Yeah, so not the greatest starting hand here from Muzzy. He's got an Innervate and he's got a Wrath, so he can kind of get a little bit of stuff done here. But this is really the big picture of what Warlock deck ErA's playing here. With no 1-drop or coin into a 2-drop, I have to believe this is something like maybe Handlock or that sort of that Dragon Warlock deck that we've seen gain a lot of popularity over the past week.
Yeah, but it does look like it is a Handlock deck. Again, we don't know if it's going to be like traditional Handlock or the Dragon Warlock Handlock we've seen in. There's even been some new ones that are gaining a lot of popularity with Malagos and Soulfires and things of that nature. So it's interesting to see which Warlock is out there. Warlock really one of the hardest classes to peg right away in all of Hearthstone.
Yeah, you know, Mountain Giant I think is kind of a telltale sign usually at this point. If you're investing a lot into getting a Mountain Giant on board, it's usually a sign that you're kind of taking the more traditional path here. So Muzzy, this is really one of the only options he has is to go ahead and innovate out this Lotheb. So one of the big keys for him now is going to be picking up the right 4 and 5 drops moving forward and make sure he can continue that aggression. But he's got a big game Hunter for a Mountain Giant. That could be an extremely key card in this matchup. A second Wrath isn't going to do him any good. I expect him to probably dig with one of these. Get some more information, figure out exactly what's going on. But as far as his curve is concerned, there is really not much here to make up for what's happening.
Yeah, and he picks up a good 5-drop here. It's a good draw for him to be able to play it next turn right on curve. So that's exactly what he wanted to get out of his cycled Wrath there. And he's going to get in a little damage here. An early Lotheb, not typically the exact minion you want to be getting out as early as possible, Drew, but you'll take what you can get. It's not a bad one. It's not back-breaking as it is sometimes late in the game, though, against these control decks.
Wild Growth going to be in hand for quite a while now. And Twilight Drake over the Mountain Giant. This is, I think, a really key point in the game here. This is really the one turn where ErA can play Twilight Drake, and if it gets silenced by something like Keeper of the Grove, Muzzy doesn't have the mana afterwards to answer that very cleanly, so he still gets 4 points of damage out of it. If he'd played the Mountain Giant instead, he would be so vulnerable to the swing that Big Game Hunter would provide that it would kind of nullify the effect of even having a minion that large on board. So I like that he's gone with the Twilight Drake here, but again, a turn 3 Lotheb is not a joke when it comes to pressure. This has dealt 10 points of damage already. ErA's at 16. Yeah,
and it looks like it's going to do a little bit more damage as well. Muzzy's going to be able to get out a Mountain Giant this turn, but he's going to have to use the coin if he wants to give it taunt this turn as well. So looks like he's going to entrench himself for a long game here.
Yeah, I like the Dark Bomb here. Just go ahead and clear out this Druid of the Claw. You still have plenty of time to taunt up. Maybe you'll draw something like a Molten Giant. That'd be a fantastic card to couple with that. He also hasn't known whether or not Muzzy's got an answer to something like this too. So seeing a Big Game Hunter here, he's going to be devastated by that sort of play. It's the last thing he wants to see, but it's better than just using your taunt now, I think, and kind of losing the effect moving forward, because Muzzy would have a very clean answer to all the taunt effects that ErA would have played this turn had he played them.
Yeah, we've seen Muzzy's hand, we talked about it earlier, wasn't the best hand to curve out with. We see it becoming better and better in these last couple turns. The Wild Growth, not the best draw, but he did just get a Savage Roar. He's going to be able to pair up with a Force of Nature here later, and he's getting a lot of value out of this Big Game Hunter here. He's going to clear off this Drake, and he's going to actually be able to use this Wild Growth now. He's not going to get the extra damage from his hero power, but he's going to get himself a turn sooner to that dreaded combo.
Yeah, you see like a drastic change in strategy here from Muzzy too as he started focusing on controlling the board. That's really interesting to me, considering that he has this this much damage in his hand. I would figure the more pressure that he applied to his opponent, sort of the better position he would find himself in as you move into these Force Nature and Savage Roar turns. Now, at the same time, the fact that he has that much damage, I think, has left him comfortable with the idea of not applying as much pressure as before, and instead focusing on making sure cards like Twilight Drake are kept check in the view of something maybe like Earthen Ring Farseer or Defender of Argus. So kind of interesting that he's chosen to take this and now how he moves forward, because after this turn, I mean, the Cenarius I think was a really big pickup. He's going to be able to clean up what's happening on the board here. But after, I mean, if he had not had that Cenarius, this could have been a very ugly position for him.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him actually cycle the Wrath here. I thought we might see a turn where you use the swipe and hero power to clear the front half of the Belcher, use the Wrath to clear the second half, and get in 4 points of damage with your big game hunter here. But it looks like Muzzy's actually going to prioritize just clearing the minion out, keeping his options open, and getting a card deeper into his deck.
Yeah, I mean, putting him at 14 here, I mean, this is kind of the magic number. ErA has something that he needs to consider this turn, and that's obviously Force Nature Savage Roar. So this puts the onus on him to make sure he does something, but it doesn't apply so much pressure that Molten Giant becomes a free minion at that point. And that's obviously one of the bigger swings that you can have in terms of minion pressure. So the fact that he's chosen to focus on that moving forward, I think part of drawing the card off the Wrath also is consideration of his hand. Doesn't have all the strongest stuff moving forward, and ErA is going to call here and says, you know what, if you got Force Nature Savage Roar, I don't think I have effective plays to play around that anyway, and Muzzy has it right on that 9-mana turn. He's going to pick up game 1.
Yeah, Muzzy picks up game 1 on the back of Savage Roar, Force of Nature here. Huge combo, huge amount of damage here early in the game. That early Wild Growth, that late Wild Growth definitely helped out a ton here. And as we said, ErA tried to call him out on maybe you don't have it, and you know what, he did. And Muzzy in the winner's circle right away. On pace to get that first win here in HPL.
Yeah, I mean, that game is particularly interesting to me because this is something you see a lot from pretty much any professional who finds himself in a Hearthstone situation like this, is that you're going to have to take a risk at some point in the game. And that's pretty much the earliest point that ErA even had to take a major risk like that. So when he finds himself in that position, I think it's partially what's accounting for that too, is how defensive that Muzzy had gotten sort of in that mid-game when he drastically switched the way his game plan was working. He stopped being quite as aggressive and focused a little bit more on controlling the board. And I think that maybe had given ErA the idea that he had a more minion-centric hand than he actually had. I mean, that's possible that threw him off, but I can't blame him for taking a risk there. If he succeeds on that turn and Muzzy doesn't have the damage to deal lethal there, ErA finds himself in a fantastic position afterwards with anti-Keelbot and the ability to taunt up afterwards. He'd already seen a big game hunter, so there wasn't a major threat of that to take out the second Dr. Boom. I actually like his play towards the end there. It's just, you know, Muzzy has the right cards.
Yeah, those are all great points. It's very interesting to see how you play when you have to believe what your opponent has in turns 5 through 7, and then it just, you know, he actually did have a combo, so it ended up killing him, but he gave him kind of a false read there, and we've talked about this before on the show, where it doesn't always matter exactly what's in your hand. It matters what's in your opponent's hand, and what story are they telling you. You're trying to figure it out, trying to figure out their range. What do they have? What do they possibly have the next couple turns? And as you said, Muzzy had kind of entrenched himself a little bit there, got a little defensive. It didn't exactly show off, hey, I have combo here and I'm trying to kill you. And then you know what? He did.
Yeah, really interesting stuff there for Muzzy. I have to say, pretty great played game. You know, picked up the right cards at the right time. That's sort of how Druid works. It's got a very high density of minions to draw as you kind of scale your way up the curve. I like the pick from him. You know, we've talked about him trying to find the balance between aggression and control and sort of taking a safer pick. What I would say in Druid, I think was a fantastic choice for him, especially given that ErA's been queuing up so much control.
Yeah, ErA's been queuing up a lot of control. You know where you can find that out? At pvplive.net. Guys, go to the website, look at ErA and Muzzy's career statistics. You can find out anything you want in there. When we come back, we're going to have Game 2 here between ErA and Muzzy. You're watching Hearthstone on PvP Live.